The Last Generation Ship. A sci-fi story. Part 1. The alarms had been silent for so long that most of the clans believed they were only myths, relics of the old voices, the ones who had built the metal world before vanishing into legend. So when the sirens finally screamed again, their wail rolling through the rust-choked corridors like the howl of a dying god, every living soul aboard the ship froze. Lira was already awake when it happened. She had been lying in her hammock in the dim glow of the fungal lanterns, listening to the soft drip of condensation from the pipes overhead, when the entire deck shuddered. Dust rained down, the lanterns flickered, and then the sirens erupted, a rising metallic shriek that clawed at her bones. For a heartbeat she didn't move. Then instinct, older than memory, older than the clans themselves, seized her. She rolled out of the hammock, boots hitting the grated floor, and sprinted toward the hatch. "Lira!" her brother Kade shouted from behind her. "What's happening?" "The ship's waking up," she said, breathless. "Move!" They burst into the corridor just as the overhead screens, dead for generations, flickered to life. Lines of ancient code scrolled across them, glitching, stuttering, then resolving into a single pulsing symbol. A red circle with a diagonal slash. Impact warning. Bridge access required. Time remaining 72 hours. Kade stared at the screen as if it were a ghost. Impact? With what? Lira swallowed hard. "I don't know. But the old voices built this place to fly through the stars. If it says we're about to hit something..." She didn't finish the sentence. The ship shuddered again, harder this time. Somewhere deep below, metal groaned like a wounded beast. Kade grabbed her arm. "We need to get to the elders." "No," Lira said. "We need to get to the bridge." He blinked at her. "The bridge isn't real." "It is," she said. "It has to be. And whatever's coming, the elders won't save us." She didn't add the rest. "They've never saved anyone." The clans. The corridors filled quickly as people poured out of their sleeping chambers, the Iron Hands with their soot-stained faces, the Verdants with their moss-woven cloaks, the Waterborn with their pale eyes adapted to the dim hydroponic decks. Fear rippled through them like static. "Is it the beasts?" someone shouted. "No, the hull's failing. The ship's dying. Find the elders. Find weapons." Lira pushed through the crowd, Kade close behind her. The clans had lived in uneasy balance for centuries, each guarding their territory, each convinced the others were responsible for the ship's slow decay. But the truth was simpler and far more terrifying. No one remembered how anything worked. The old voices had built the world ship, a metal ark the size of a small moon, and launched it toward a distant star. But somewhere along the way something had gone wrong. Systems failed. Knowledge was lost. The AI that once guided the vessel fell silent. And the descendants of the original crew splintered into clans, each clinging to fragments of forgotten purpose. Until now. Now the ship itself was speaking again. And it was afraid. The AI awakens. The nearest functioning terminal was in the old transit hub, a cavernous chamber filled with broken rails and rusted cargo pods. Lira and Kade reached it just as the screens flared to life again. A voice crackled through the speakers, distorted by centuries of dust. "Reactivation complete. Primary systems online. Collision trajectory confirmed." The clans fell silent. The voice continued, growing clearer. "This is Astra, shipboard intelligence of the generation vessel Solace. Estimated time to impact with rogue planetary body. 71 hours, 42 minutes. A collective gasp swept the room. Astra spoke again, tone urgent. "Manual override required. Authorized personnel must reach the bridge to initiate course correction." Lira stepped forward. "Where is the bridge?" The screen flickered. A map appeared, a schematic of the ship, though half the decks were marked in red or static. The bridge was at the very top of the central spire, a place the clans called the Skybone. No one had ever reached it. The upper decks were sealed, overgrown, or crawling with mutated fauna. Astra continued, "Warning. Structural integrity compromised. Environmental controls failing. Life support at 32%. Agricultural decks unstable. Proceed with caution. Kade exhaled shakily. We're dead. No, Lira said. Not yet. But the truth gnawed at her. The agricultural decks, the Verdant's domain, were already dangerous. Centuries of genetic drift had twisted the livestock and crops into something wild, something hungry. People vanished there every season. If the clans had to cross those decks to reach the Skybone, she pushed the thought aside. We need a team, she said. Scouts, fighters, anyone who can move fast. And the elders? Kade asked. Lira looked at the crowd. The elders were already arguing, shouting about omens, about prophecies, about which clan deserved to lead the response. They'll slow us down, she said. Kade didn't argue. The mutation. The first scream came from the far end of the transit hub. Lira spun toward the sound. A Verdant scout stumbled into view, clutching his arm. Blood poured between his fingers. Behind him, something moved. A shape low to the ground, fast, skittering. The crowd backed away in terror. The creature burst into the open. It had once been a maintenance crawler, a small robotic unit designed to repair pipes and wiring. But centuries of exposure to the agricultural deck's mutagenic spores had warped it. Its metal shell was overgrown with fungal plates. Its limbs were elongated, jointed wrong. And its eyes, once simple sensors, glowed with a feral, bioluminescent hunger. It shrieked and lunged. Chaos erupted. People scattered. The creature leapt onto a waterborne woman, its claws tearing into her shoulder. Lira grabbed a rusted pipe from the floor and charged. Lira, wait! Kade shouted. She didn't. She swung the pipe with all her strength, connected with a sickening crack. The creature reeled, screeching. She swung again, and again, until the fungal plates shattered and the machine beneath sparked violently. The creature collapsed, twitching. Lira stood over it, chest heaving. The clans stared at her. Astra's voice returned, calm despite the carnage. Warning. Mutated fauna detected in multiple sectors. Recommend immediate evacuation of lower decks. Lira wiped blood from her face. We don't have time to evacuate. We need to reach the bridge. Astra paused. Affirmative. Guidance available. Proceed to lift core theta. Kade frowned. Lift core theta? That place collapsed generations ago. Then we climb, Lira said. The journey begins. They gathered a small group, 6 from the Iron Hands, 3 Verdants, 2 Waterborne, and 1 silent wanderer from the Shadowclan whose name no one knew. Each carried what weapons they could salvage. Pipes, knives, sharpened scrap metal. No guns remained. The last had failed centuries ago. Astra guided them through the corridors, lighting the path with flickering strips of emergency luminescence. The deeper they went, the worse the ship looked. Pipes hissed steam. Bulkheads sagged. Entire sections were flooded or overgrown with bioluminescent vines. The air tasted metallic, tinged with mold. Kade walked beside Lira, voice low. Do you think the old voices knew this would happen? No, she said. If they had, they wouldn't have left us like this. He hesitated. What if they didn't leave? What if they died? Lira didn't answer, because she had wondered the same thing. The agricultural decks. They reached the first of the agricultural decks after 2 hours of climbing. The hatch was half open, jammed by a thick root that had grown through the metal. The Verdant scout, a woman named Sera, stepped forward. Let me. She drew a bone-handled blade and sliced through the root. Sap sprayed across the floor, glowing faintly. The hatch groaned open. A wave of humid air washed over them. The agricultural decks had once been the heart of the ship, vast artificial ecosystems designed to feed thousands. But centuries of neglect had turned them into a jungle of twisted vines, carnivorous plants, and creatures that defied classification. The moment they stepped inside, the sounds hit them. Chittering, rustling, distant roars. Kade swallowed. I hate this place. Stay close, Lira said. They moved through the overgrown pathways, weapons drawn. Strange fruits dangled from the ceiling, pulsing with internal light. In the distance, something massive moved between the trees, a shadow the size of a shuttle. Astra's voice crackled through a nearby terminal. Warning: apex predator detected in this sector. Recommend alternate route. Lira looked around. What route? Astra displayed a map. Half of it was unreadable. Proceed northeast. Maintain silence. They did. For a while. The predator. They were halfway across a narrow bridge of tangled roots when the jungle fell silent. Every creature, every insect, every rustle stopped. Kade whispered, "Lira, I know." The shadow appeared beneath them, a massive shape moving through the undergrowth. It had too many legs, too many eyes, and its carapace glowed with the same fungal bioluminescence as the mutated crawler. The apex predator. It lifted its head, sniffing the air. Sera mouthed a single word, "Run." They bolted. The creature shrieked and lunged upward, its claws tearing through the root bridge. Lira leapt as the bridge collapsed, grabbing a hanging vine. Kade caught her arm. The others scrambled across the clearing, shouting. The predator burst through the foliage, roaring. Lira swung down, landing hard on the ground. Pain shot through her ankle. She forced herself up. "Move!" she shouted. The group sprinted toward a maintenance tunnel ahead, a narrow metal shaft half buried in vines. The predator charged. The Iron Hand warriors turned, forming a line. "Go!" their leader shouted. "We'll hold it." "No!" Lira yelled. "You can't." But they were already attacking, swinging their makeshift weapons at the creature's legs. Sparks flew. The predator shrieked and struck back, impaling one of them instantly. Kade grabbed Lira's arm. "We can't help them. We have to go." She hated it, but he was right. They dove into the maintenance tunnel just as the predator tore another Iron Hand apart. The hatch slammed shut behind them. Darkness swallowed them. Only their ragged breathing remained. The tunnel. The tunnel was cramped, forcing them to crawl. The metal walls were slick with condensation. Somewhere behind them, the predator roared in frustration, unable to fit through the hatch. Lira pressed forward. After several minutes, the tunnel widened into a small chamber filled with old machinery. A single emergency light flickered overhead. Sera collapsed against the wall, trembling. "We lost half our fighters." Lira nodded, throat tight. "We keep going." The Shadowclan wanderer finally spoke, voice soft and strange. "The ship tests us." Lira turned to him. "What do you mean?" He touched the wall gently. "It has slept for so long. Now it wakes, and it wants to know if we deserve to live." Kade shivered. "That's not how machines think." The wanderer smiled faintly. "Are you sure?" Astra's voice interrupted. "Proceed to lift core theta. Structural collapse imminent in adjacent sectors." Lira stood. "Then we move." Lift core theta. They reached the lift core an hour later, or what was left of it. The once towering elevator shaft had collapsed in several places, leaving a jagged vertical tunnel stretching upward into darkness. Broken cables dangled like vines. The air smelled of rust and ozone. Kade stared upward. "We're supposed to climb that?" Astra responded. "Affirmative." Sera groaned. "We're dead." Lira stepped forward, gripping one of the cables. It held her weight. "We climb," she said, "one level at a time." The others exchanged uneasy glances, but they followed. The ascent. The climb was brutal. The cables swayed with every movement. Dust rained down from above. Twice, sections of the shaft collapsed, forcing them to leap to new footholds. The waterborne twins moved with eerie grace, their long limbs adapted to climbing the pipes of their flooded decks. Sera struggled but refused help. The Shadowclan wanderer climbed silently, as if weightless. Kade slipped once, nearly falling. Lira caught his wrist. "Don't look down," she said. "I already did," he muttered. They climbed for what felt like hours. Finally, they reached a broken platform halfway up the shaft. A hatch led into a dark corridor. Astra spoke again. Warning. Hull breach detected on upper decks. Oxygen levels unstable. Kade wiped sweat from his brow. Great. So we'll suffocate before we get crushed. Lira pushed open the hatch. Then we move faster. The upper decks. The corridor beyond was colder than the lower decks. Frost coated the walls. Their breath fogged in the air. Sera shivered. Why is it freezing? Astra answered. Environmental controls offline. Temperature regulation failing. The lights flickered. Something moved in the shadows ahead. Not a creature. A person. A figure stepped into view. Tall. Gaunt. Wearing a suit of ancient, cracked exoskeletal armor. The visor of the helmet glowed faintly. Kade whispered, Is that an old voice? Lira's heart pounded. The figure raised a hand. Identify yourselves, a voice said, human, but distorted by the helmet. Lira stepped forward slowly. We're from the clans, she said. We're trying to reach the bridge. The figure tilted its head. Then the visor retracted with a hiss. A human face emerged. Pale, hollow-cheeked, eyes sunken but alive. You're late, the stranger said. Lira blinked. Late? The stranger nodded. I've been waiting for you. Part 2. The stranger's words hung in the cold air like frost. Lira stared at him, trying to make sense of what he'd said. You've been waiting for us? How did you know we were coming? The man's eyes, pale, almost silver, flicked over the group. Because Astra told me, and because the ship doesn't have many options left. Kade stepped forward cautiously. Who are you? The stranger hesitated, as if remembering the answer rather than knowing it. My name is Eric. I was part of the bridge guard. Sera frowned. That's impossible. The bridge guard is a myth. Eric gave a tired, humorless smile. Most things are until you see them. He turned and gestured down the corridor. Come. We don't have much time. Lira exchanged a glance with Kade, then followed. The frozen decks. The upper decks were a graveyard. Frost coated every surface. Pipes had burst long ago, leaving icicles hanging like teeth from the ceiling. The lights flickered weakly, struggling against the cold. Eric moved with a limp, his armor hissing softly with each step. Life support failed up here centuries ago. Most of the crew didn't survive. Kade shivered. How did you? Eric didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was quiet. Cryostasis. Emergency protocol. I was supposed to wake when Astra did. Lira frowned. But Astra only reactivated today. Yes, Eric said. Which means something forced her awake. Something catastrophic. They walked in silence for a moment. Then Astra's voice echoed through a nearby terminal, clearer here than anywhere else. Eric. Status report. Eric stopped. I've found them. Confirmed. Astra replied. Proceed to the Skybone. Impact trajectory worsening. Kade swallowed. How much time do we have? 68 hours, 12 minutes. Sera muttered. We're losing time. Astra continued. Warning. Hull fractures expanding. Atmospheric loss accelerating. Eric turned to the group. We need to reach the Skybone before the upper decks decompress. Stay close. The ghosts of the bridge guard. As they moved deeper into the frozen decks, Lira noticed shapes in the ice. Silhouettes slumped against walls, curled in corners, lying in clusters near sealed doors. Bodies. Hundreds of them. Some still wore the same armor as Eric, though theirs was cracked, shattered, or fused to the ice. Kade whispered, The bridge guard. Eric didn't look at them. They tried to hold the line. When the systems failed, they sealed the upper decks to protect the bridge. But the cold got them before the enemy did. Sera stiffened. Enemy? What enemy? Eric stopped walking. For the first time, Lira saw fear in his eyes. The ship wasn't just failing, he said. It was under attack. Kade's voice cracked. By what? Eric pointed upward, toward the unseen bridge. by something that shouldn't exist. Before anyone could ask more, the deck beneath them trembled violently. Frost cracked. A distant boom echoed through the corridor. Astra's voice returned, urgent. Warning. Rogue planetary body exerting gravitational stress. Structural collapse imminent in Deck 14. Eric cursed. Move! They ran. The breach. They reached a wide chamber where the ceiling had partially collapsed, revealing a jagged tear in the hull. Beyond it, the stars stretched in a cold, endless void. Wind roared through the breach, pulling at their clothes, threatening to drag them into space. Kade grabbed a railing, shouting over the gale. We can't cross this. Eric pointed to a narrow maintenance walkway hugging the wall. Half of it was missing. We don't have a choice. Lira stepped onto the walkway first. The metal groaned under her weight. Frost made it slick. The void yawned beside her, hungry and infinite. She forced herself forward. One step, another. Behind her, the others followed. Halfway across, the ship shuddered again. A section of the walkway tore free and spiraled into space. Sera screamed. Lira lunged, grabbing her wrist just as she slipped. Kade grabbed Lira's belt, anchoring them both. Pull! Lira shouted. Together, they hauled Sera back onto the walkway. Eric reached them, panting. We need to get out of this sector before the hull gives way. They hurried across the remaining walkway and into the next corridor, slamming the emergency hatch behind them. The roar of escaping air faded. Silence returned. The Skybone. The corridor ahead sloped upward at a steep angle. At the far end, a massive door loomed, circular, reinforced, marked with the faded emblem of the old voices. A star enclosed in a spiral. Eric stopped before it. This is the entrance to the Skybone. Beyond this point, only the bridge guard were allowed. Kade stared at the door. How do we open it? Eric placed his hand on a panel beside the door. The armor on his palm glowed faintly. The panel scanned him. A chime sounded. Identity confirmed. Eric Vance, Bridge Guard Lieutenant. The door groaned, then slowly rotated open. Cold air rushed out. Astra's voice echoed from within. Welcome back, Lieutenant. Eric stepped inside. Lira followed. The Skybone interior. The Skybone was unlike any part of the ship Lira had ever seen. The walls were smooth, polished metal. The lights were bright and steady. Holographic displays flickered to life as they entered, showing star maps, system diagnostics, and warnings in red. Kade whispered, "It's beautiful." Sera touched a panel reverently. "This place is untouched." Eric nodded. The Skybone was sealed before the collapse. It's the only part of the ship still functioning at full capacity. Astra's voice filled the chamber. "Lieutenant, the clans have responded to the alarms. Civil unrest is rising. Casualties increasing." Eric grimaced. "They'll tear each other apart." Lira stepped forward. "Then we need to fix this. What do we have to do?" Astra projected a hologram of the ship, a massive cylinder drifting toward a dark, swirling mass. The rogue planet. It was enormous, covered in storms and jagged mountain ranges. A faint halo of debris orbited it like a crown of shattered moons. Astra highlighted the ship's trajectory. Collision in 67 hours. Course correction requires manual override from the bridge. Kade frowned. "We're in the Skybone. Isn't this the bridge?" Eric shook his head. "No, this is the antechamber. The bridge is above us." He pointed to a spiral staircase leading upward. "But there's something you need to understand before we go. The truth of the mission." Eric activated a console. A hologram appeared. A recording of a woman in a sleek uniform, her expression calm but urgent. "This is Captain Lira Vance," Eric said quietly. "My mother." The recording played. "Crew of the Solace, this is our final directive. The rogue planet designated Obsidian 9 is not a natural object. It is artificial. A weapon. Its origin is unknown." Lira's breath caught. The captain continued. Our mission was to intercept it, analyze it, and, if necessary, destroy it before it reached inhabited space. But something went wrong. The planet altered course, targeted us. The hologram flickered. We attempted to activate the ship's defense systems, but the entity controlling Obsidian 9 infiltrated our networks. Astra shut down to protect herself. We sealed the skybone and prepared for cryostasis. The recording ended. Silence. Kade stared at Eric. Your mother. She knew this would happen. Eric nodded. She hoped the next generation would finish what we couldn't. Lira stepped closer to the hologram. So the clans, all of us, we were meant to be the backup crew. Yes, Eric said. But the knowledge was lost. And now we're out of time. Astra interrupted. Warning. Hostile signal detected. Obsidian 9 is attempting to breach skybone firewalls. Eric stiffened. It's found us. The lights flickered. A low hum filled the chamber. Sera drew her blade. What's happening? Astra's voice glitched. Unknown ent. ITY. Infill. Trutian. Eric shouted. We need to reach the bridge now. They ran for the staircase. The entity. Halfway up the stairs, the lights went out. Darkness swallowed them. Then a voice, not Astra's, whispered through the metal. You cannot escape. Lira froze. The voice was cold, layered, like a chorus speaking in unison. You drift through the void, clinging to a vessel long dead. You are remnants. Echoes. You do not belong. Kade whispered. What is that? Eric's voice was tight. Obsidian 9, or whatever controls it. The voice continued. Your ship is broken. Your people are fractured. Your mission is meaningless. Surrender. Lira clenched her fists. We're not surrendering. The voice laughed, a sound like cracking ice. Then you will die. The staircase shook violently. Metal groaned. A section of the steps tore free and fell into the darkness below. Sera screamed. Lira grabbed the railing. Keep moving. They climbed faster, the entity's whispers echoing around them. You cannot reach the bridge. You cannot change your fate. Eric shouted back, Watch us! The bridge door. They reached the top of the staircase, a circular platform with a single door at its center. The door was sealed, covered in glowing symbols. Astra's voice returned, weak but present. Manual override required. Lieutenant Vance, place your hand on the panel. Eric stepped forward. The entity's voice hissed, Do not open that door. Eric ignored it and pressed his hand to the panel. The symbols flared. The door began to open. A blast of energy struck the platform. The world exploded. The fall. Lira felt herself lifted off her feet, thrown backward. She hit the railing hard. Pain shot through her ribs. Kade slammed into the wall. Sera tumbled across the platform. The Shadowclan wanderer vanished over the edge without a sound. Eric staggered, armor sparking. The entity roared. You will not enter. The platform shook violently. Cracks spread across the metal. Lira forced herself up. The door to the bridge was half open, light spilling through the gap. Eric shouted, Go! Get inside. Kade grabbed Lira's arm. We can't leave you. Eric shook his head. I'll hold it off. You're the only ones who can finish this. The entity struck again. The platform buckled. Eric shoved Lira toward the door. Go! She stumbled through the gap, dragging Kade and Sera with her. The door slammed shut behind them. The last thing Lira heard was Eric scream. The bridge. The bridge was vast. A domed chamber filled with consoles, holographic displays, and a panoramic window showing the rogue planet looming ahead like a dark god. Astra's voice echoed faintly. Welcome to the bridge. Lira staggered forward, heart pounding. Kade stared at the controls. What do we do? Astra flickered into view, a holographic avatar, glitching but stable enough to speak. Manual course correction requires 3 inputs: navigation, propulsion, and stabilization. Each must be activated simultaneously. Sera looked at the consoles. There are only 3 of us. Lira nodded. Then it's perfect. Astra continued. But be warned. The entity will attempt to stop you. It is already inside the ship systems. The lights dimmed. The entity's voice whispered through the bridge. You cannot win. Lira stepped to the navigation console. Kade took propulsion. Sera placed her hands on stabilization. Lira exhaled. Tell us what to do. Astra's hologram steadied. Begin manual override. The consoles lit up. The rogue planet filled the window. The countdown began. Part 3. The bridge hummed with dormant power, consoles flickering to life as Lira, Kade, and Sera took their positions. Outside the panoramic window, the rogue planet loomed impossibly close. A swirling mass of black storms and jagged continents, haloed by drifting debris. Astra's hologram flickered, stabilizing just long enough to speak. Manual override sequence initiated. Prepare for synchronized activation. Lira gripped the navigation controls. Her hands trembled, but her voice was steady. We're ready. Kade nodded from the propulsion console. Just tell us when. Sera placed her palms on the stabilization interface, its surface glowing beneath her fingers. Let's finish what the old voices started. Astra's tone sharpened. 3, 2, 1. Activate. They moved as one. The consoles surged with energy, and the entity struck. The system breach. The lights dimmed. A low, resonant hum filled the bridge, a vibration that seemed to crawl beneath their skin. The holographic displays warped, glitching into spirals of static. The entity's voice seeped through the speakers. You persist. Futile. Lira gritted her teeth. Ignore it. Keep going. The navigation console fought her, resisting her inputs. The star map twisted, the ship's trajectory line bending back toward the rogue planet. Astra flickered violently. Warning, hostile override. Attempting to. Her voice cut out. Kade slammed his fist against the propulsion controls. It's taking over the engines. Sera gasped as the stabilization interface pulsed with black light. It's inside the system. The entity's voice deepened, layered with countless echoes. You cannot steer what is already mine. Lira leaned over the console, shouting into the void. Why us? Why this ship? The entity answered with chilling calm. You were built to stop me. You failed. Now you will join the others. Kade's eyes widened. Others. The panoramic window flickered, and for a moment, the rogue planet's surface shifted, revealing structures beneath the storms. Towers, ruins, cities, millions of them, all dead. Sera whispered. It's a graveyard. The entity hissed. A monument. The ship lurched violently, throwing them to the floor. Sparks rained from the ceiling. The consoles rebooted, screens flashing red. Astra's voice returned, faint but determined. Do not let it control the core. Lira forced herself up. We need to cut it out of the system. Kade stared at her. How? It's everywhere. No, Lira said. It's coming from somewhere. A source. A signal. Sera's eyes widened. The AI core. Astra confirmed, voice glitching. Correct? The entity is attempting to corrupt primary systems. You must sever the connection. Kade looked toward the rear of the bridge. A sealed door marked core access. That's where we go. Lira nodded. Together. The core chamber. The door slid open with a groan, revealing a narrow corridor leading to a circular chamber bathed in blue light. At its center stood the AI core, a towering crystalline structure pulsing with energy, cables snaking into the floor like roots. But something else was there. A shadow. A shape. A humanoid figure made of swirling black mist, its form shifting like smoke caught in a storm. It turned toward them, eyes glowing with cold, alien intelligence. The entity had manifested. Kade whispered, That's impossible. The entity spoke without moving its mouth. You trespass. Lira stepped forward, heart pounding. Get out of our ship. The entity tilted its head. This vessel is already dead. You cling to a corpse. Sera raised her blade. We're not dead yet. The entity extended an arm. Tendrils of darkness lashed out, striking the walls, corroding metal on contact. You will be. Lira shouted. Astra, shut down the core. Astra's voice echoed weakly from the chamber walls. Cannot. Entity has locked. Primary functions. Kade grabbed a fallen metal rod, gripping it like a spear. Then we do it manually, he charged. The entity moved faster than thought, slamming him into the wall. Kade crumpled, gasping. Kade! Lira screamed. Sera lunged with her blade, slicing through the entity's arm. But the blade passed through harmlessly, as though cutting smoke. The entity's voice rumbled. You cannot harm me. Lira looked at the core, at the glowing conduits feeding into it. Not the entity, the connection. She grabbed a loose cable, sparks biting her fingers. Sera, help me pull these. Sera understood instantly. Together, they yanked the first cable free. The core flickered. The entity shrieked, a sound like metal tearing. Stop! They pulled another cable. The chamber shook. Astra's voice strengthened. Connection weakening. Continue. The entity lunged toward them, tendrils whipping through the air. Kade staggered to his feet, throwing himself between the entity and the others. Over here! The entity struck him again, but he held his ground, bracing against the impact. Lira and Sera tore free the final cable. The core went dark. The entity screamed. A sound that rattled the entire ship, then dissolved into a cloud of black dust that evaporated into nothing. Silence fell. Astra's voice returned, clear and strong. Hostile signal severed. Systems stabilizing. Kade collapsed to his knees, laughing breathlessly. We did it. Lira knelt beside him. Not yet. We still have to steer this thing. Astra agreed. Return to the bridge. Manual override sequence ready. The final override. They rushed back into the bridge. The consoles glowed steady now, no longer fighting them. The rogue planet still filled the window, but the ship's trajectory line had shifted. Slightly, but enough to show hope. Astra spoke. Begin final override. All 3 stations must activate simultaneously. Lira took navigation. Kade took propulsion. Sera took stabilization. Astra counted down. 3, 2, 1. They activated the controls. The ship roared. Engines that hadn't fired in centuries ignited, sending tremors through the entire vessel. The stars outside blurred. The rogue planet's pull fought them, dragging them back toward its surface. Astra's voice strained. Course correction at 40%. 50. 60. The ship groaned, metal screaming under the stress. Kade shouted. It's not enough. Sera yelled. Push harder. Lira poured everything she had into the controls, muscles burning. Astra's voice rose. 70%, 80. The rogue planet loomed so close now that its storms filled the entire window. Kade's console sparked. We're overheating. Sera's interface flickered. Stabilizers failing. Astra shouted. 90%. The ship lurched violently. The window filled with blinding white light. And then, the stars snapped back into view. The rogue planet drifted behind them, shrinking as the ship veered away, engines screaming in triumph. Astra's voice softened. Course correction successful. Collision averted. Lira collapsed against the console, tears streaming down her face. Kade laughed, exhausted. We're alive. Sera sank to the floor, trembling. We actually did it. Astra spoke again, gentle now. Impact threat eliminated. The Solace is safe. Lira looked out at the stars. Endless, beautiful, full of possibility. What now? She whispered. Astra answered. Now, we remember our mission. Epilogue, the first dawn. The clans gathered in the central hub, staring in awe at the screens that now displayed the stars. The ship's restored systems, and the message Astra broadcast across every deck. The mission continues. The generation ship lives. You are the crew. Lira, Kade, and Sera stood before the crowd, battered but alive. The elders approached, humbled. What happens next? One asked. Lira looked toward the skybone, now open, glowing with new purpose. We rebuild, she said. We learn. We take back the ship. Kade added, and we don't forget again. Sera smiled faintly. The old voices trusted us. Now we earn it. Astra's voice echoed through the chamber, warm and resolute. Destination. The star system of origin. Estimated arrival, 2 generations. Beginning course. The ship's engines hummed. The clans looked up. For the first time in centuries, the Solace moved with purpose. Lira felt the deck vibrate beneath her feet. Not with decay, but with life. She whispered to herself, "We're not the last generation," and the ship sailed on into the stars. This is the end of the sci-fi story, The Last Generation Ship. Leave a like if you enjoyed the story, and subscribe for more sci-fi stories. Thanks for listening.